Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Tuesday morning, the 5th of November. It's Guy Fawkes night tonight. Remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. Guy Fawkes, poor fella, was found in a cellar and afterwards found it red hot. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the Delphi case once again today. Yesterday was day 15 of testimony, well into the defence case in chief. I think the defence are going to be done soon, given that they're not allowed, and they tried once again to get the third-party defence in yesterday, but to no avail. Since they're not allowed to present the defence they wanted to, then I think they're going to be done soon. There is a ballistics expert that I'm waiting to hear from. There was two ballistics experts they wanted to call. One of them they're not allowed, as we've talked about in previous videos, because Judge Gunn's banned him because apparently he's not an expert, even though he worked for the FBI for like forever. But there is another one who has not been banned, so I'm hoping they're going to call him. I can't think who else though, because yesterday was fun-packed. I say that with all the sarcasm that I can muster. Fun-packed it was, with the mainstream media. Oh dear, anyway, we're going to talk about it all. Let's go.
It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Before an angry Andrew Baldwin left the courthouse, 13 News overheard him speaking to Richard Allen's wife, saying, "It ain't over. The world's watching. The world sees what's going on."
Alright, so the jury watched some more videos. This time it was Incel videos. And Nick McClelland on cross-examination tried to say to Max Baker that because he worked for the defence, maybe he, the defence told him what to say, and he said no, he had his own discretion on what to include. And Nick said, yeah, but you've only included the worst of the worst footage. So, well, I could play more if you want. There's loads more. And the fact that that was the worst of the worst doesn't take anything away from the fact that it happened at all. But before the videos, there was Dr. Polly Westcott, who is a clinical psychologist who specialises in neuro and forensic psychology. Forensic psychology is the study of crime. Neuro is the study of the brain and how the nervous system interacts with behaviour. So she watched a bunch of stuff, the horrors that happened in Westville, and she assessed him. She spent 2 days assessing him using proper psychological measures to do so. And she concluded, based on all of her assessments, that, as was obvious to anybody who isn't just completely biased towards the prosecution, Rick Allen wasn't malingering, wasn't faking. He was genuinely in psychosis. Maybe not for the entire time, because if you're psychotic, it doesn't mean to say you're psychotic all the time. He was in a really, really bad way. And she says that he suffers from dependent personality disorder. So that makes sense to something that was brought up on Cross when Dr. Monica Waller was on the stand. Dependent personality disorder. It's not dependent on situation, although certain situations can make it worse. But the fact that he's been separated from his family for all of this time is another risk factor for just sending him into not being able to cope with life. So I thought her testimony was interesting from what I could gather, because none of us is allowed to watch it, are we? No, okay. I was concerned about the jury questions on this, and I don't know how the jury were allowed to elicit these responses. I don't know how those questions were allowed, but these are the questions that were asked. If Mr. Allen had the common sense to be afraid to leave his cell, would he have the common sense to fake his symptoms? Two completely different things. If you're in fear of leaving your cell because of all the horrendous things that could be done to you, well, you could be in psychosis and still be afraid. This is how Polly Westcott answered it. Westcott said Allen's statement about being afraid was before his psychotic episode. Okay. These two questions should never have been allowed. If he was depressed as a child, would that cause him to commit crimes as an adult? And would depression as a child cause him to be a sex addict? Well, look, the way I would have answered that, I would have said that 1 in 5 people in the world that we know about have mental health struggles at some point in their life. And usually those struggles aren't as serious as psychosis. They're mainly depression and anxiety disorders. And many, many, many children suffer from depression. Doesn't get diagnosed very often in children. I think the tide is turning somewhat. I think, schools are more likely to recognise mental health struggles than in previous years. But certainly when Rick Allen was a child, depression wouldn't have been noted at all. But many children suffer from mental health struggles. It doesn't make them commit crimes, and it doesn't make them become a sex addict. Westcott said, not always relating to committing crimes. Depends on his personality type. And no to the sex addict thing. I was concerned that the jury are asking those types of questions, that someone on the jury does not understand mental health at all, that they've been unduly swayed by Monica Waller. But it remains to be seen. Hopefully it's just one juror and they can be talked down into something that is a much more appropriate opinion, in my opinion. Did you watch Allen's police interview of October 2022? She said no. So I'm interested in why they asked that question as well. Was it because he was completely insistent that he was innocent and there was no sign of mental ill health? I don't know. After the lunch break, where there was some drama, apparently, with the line, people pushing in. Murder sheet, anyone? Rick's sister and daughter were both called to the stand and asked the same questions. To both his sister Jamie and his daughter Brittany, Jennifer Auger asked these questions. Did Rick Allen ever molest them? Because in one of his confessions he said he molested his sister and his daughter. No to both of those questions. Did they love Rick? And the mainstream media got this colossally wrong in relation to Brittany's answer. They said, in response to, do you love your dad? The mainstream media, it was WTHR actually, and then Barbara McDonald retweeted it. Do you love your dad? They reported that Brittany said no. Actually, she said yes, but it was retracted. That's pretty colossal mistake. The third question was, would you lie for him on the stand? And they both said no. So some more people who were there on February 13th, 2017 and who heard absolutely nothing, even though they were there around the times when the crimes would have been committed based on the state's theory. Someone called Shelby Hicks. She said she heard nothing. Nothing. She was there with her boyfriend. They heard nothing. The jury asked if Shelby had seen an old man with a camera, and she said yeah. So that was McCain, the guy who testified the other day. Did you arrive at the bridge at 2:55? Jury question. That's very specific. Again, I don't know how to feel about these jury questions today. And she said, yeah, it could have been 2:55. Maybe they're thinking, well, by 2:55, the girls would already have been dead, so she wouldn't have heard anything, based on the state's testimony, which makes absolutely no sense. If you saw my live stream yesterday and the video that I made 2 days ago now, you'll know that the state's timeline, based on the phone data, makes absolutely no sense. No sense. But according to the state's timeline, the girls would have been probably dead by 2:32. We'll talk about that again just briefly in a second. Steve Mullin was called to the stand yet again, talking about Ford Focuses and, importantly, Libby's phone. Baldwin says to Mullin, Dr. Waller was a fan of Delphi sites, from Delphi Facebook groups, she was in Reddit, she was everywhere. He asks if it would have been important, as, a law enforcement officer, part of the Unified Command, the chief of Delphi PD at the time, whether it would have been important to find out if a van was discussed on social media. And Mullin says he didn't look. Yeah, didn't look. But the van was all over social media. Brad Webber has been discussed. Brad Webber got home at 3:30. That's what came out on social media. It's interesting how much this man seems to have changed his story. So Baldwin says there were many mentions of a van on social media. Mullin doesn't know what Waller said. She could have been drip feeding him information. Jury asked a question. Why would anyone discuss a van prior to Alan's confession? Mullin says, that's why we looked into this. That was the first thing we heard of it. And that was in August. That was the first they heard of it. Well, how come then, in March, Ray Hughes, one of the people that Monica Waller watched, was talking that you're going to know about it at some day. Talking about that in someone's chat. How's that then? How does that work? Who had been feeding Ray Hughes information in March when law enforcement apparently didn't know anything about the van until August? Make that make sense. Brad Webber. So I'm going to read this from Wish TV. 2:48, the defence calls Brad Webber. The reporter notes Webber seems extremely dishevelled. Baldwin asks him why he was upset when they talked before. He said, I was upset because you were trying to tell me what I did when I got off work. Okay, doesn't take much to anger him then, does it? Baldwin handed him a transcript from an FBI interview that Webber did in February of 2017. So this is the FBI guy, Paul. The defence are not allowed to interview because he would need to do it by video call, video conferencing. And Gull said no. Webber tells the jury he went on a 3-day trip to Arizona and got back on the Sunday. So the girls died Monday into Tuesday, 13th into 14th. Sunday would have been the 12th. So now we know why Andrew Baldwin, under cross-examination last week, asked Brad Webber where he went the week before. So he got back on the Sunday. So it's regarding the ATMs, his second job. So did he go and do his ATM thing on the Sunday when he got back? Because if not, then why didn't he go on the Monday? Because he said he needed to deal with his ATMs on a daily basis. Webber says he makes money off his ATMs through surcharges. Webber tells the jury that he attended to his ATM machines daily. So did he have to go and visit them all daily? If so, if he hadn't been there for 3 days while he was in Arizona, surely he would need to go on the Monday, unless he went on the Sunday. Unless he didn't have to visit every single one daily. Maybe he could just check the computers daily. But he has to check how much money they have and get the money from the bank. He says his ATMs are like gas stations, taverns, restaurants, etc., etc. When he goes to deal with his ATM business, he uses his black Subaru. So what was he driving on February 13th? If he normally drives his black Subaru, unless he's towing a trailer or something, then he uses his van. So was he towing a trailer on February 13th, 2017? So he had to use his van. Or was he using his usual vehicle that he normally drives, which is his black Subaru? Did he go home first, take his van home, and then go back out again to deal with his ATMs? No, because he went straight to sleep. Make all this make sense. This guy is as slippery as an eel, and I don't know why. Webber tells the jury that nobody from law enforcement asked him to go to the police station this past August, that they'd asked him to go to a different location, so at least they did speak to him in August when they heard all about the van. And we've all known about the van, or the vans. Loads of vans been mentioned. Could have been Steve Mullin that called him. The only time I used my van, when I was pulling a trailer. So was he pulling a trailer on February 13th, 2017? Didn't do anything with his ATMs, had a nap. Was woken up at 5 p.m. with someone knocking on his door. And it was someone saying, the girls are missing. So instead of being concerned, he just went back to sleep. Didn't hear any screaming, didn't hear any noise, didn't see anything, didn't know anything, just went to sleep. And then promptly went back to sleep again when he'd been told that 2 girls were missing. Webber tells the jury he gave law enforcement permission to go inside his house, but this wasn't on February 13th. Says his van was parked on the grass and the Subaru was parked in the driveway. I don't suppose that law enforcement looked at his vehicles at all, no. Whereabouts in the grass was this van? Because phones register steps when they're being moved in a vehicle over bumpy ground. So then we get McClelland's cross-examination. Webber says law enforcement stopped him on his way home a few times in February. Says someone looked through his property on February 13th. So was this before or after he went back to sleep? Confirms that he went straight home on February 13th. But was he driving his van? Was he driving his van or was he driving his black Subaru? Jury questions. Do you know if ATMs would have photo or video of servicing? It says not the ATMs, but some of them have locations, but nobody will have gone to check for any CCTV to confirm his story. How far in advance we have to order cash for ATMs? He says getting cash isn't a problem, but a week in advance. What is the process to clock out of work? He says you go through a turnstile. What driveway do you use at home? He said the driveway under Mullin High Bridge. Do you drive under the bridge? Would you have taken that route on February 13th, 2017? Yes. Do you typically go home before servicing your ATMs? He says no. So on a typical day, he leaves work and he goes servicing his ATMs. On this day, however, this one day, he does something atypical. He goes home and goes to sleep. So he's home and tucked up in bed when the murders are happening. Apparently. So drives by under the Mullin High Bridge in his van, which nobody's clear whether he was driving or not. And then, according to the state's timeline, according to this timeline, he's coming home 2:27, 2:30, disturbs Alan. Previous to this, the girls have already walked 414 metres. That does not make sense, as we've talked about yesterday. But after they got disturbed, they only walk a further 68 steps, or 50 metres. I don't know how you only walk 68 steps in 50 metres, but that's something else. And then, by the time Brad Webber is tucked up, went straight to bed, the girls are being killed. And that phone does not move again. And remember, it's over the other side of the creek. Does not move again. And he's under Abby's body. Doesn't move again after 2:32 and 39 seconds. And tucked under Abby's body. But Brad Webber, who normally doesn't go home. Brad Webber, do you typically go home before servicing your ATMs? And he says no. On a typical day, he doesn't. He goes doing his ATM stuff. This day, completely bucks his trend and doesn't bother with his ATMs, goes straight home, and he's woken up at 5. Girls are missing. Oh, all right then, and goes straight back to bed. Sorry, something is wrong here. Something is wrong here. Very wrong. I hope the jury are starting to put pieces together, but I don't know if they are. I don't know if they are. I just can't call this at all. And that worries me. Worries me a lot. But let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.
Noodle! Noodle! It's my Noodle! Come on